Good afternoon, good morning, and good night, good evening to all our attendees from all over the world, for different time zones. Um, Respected Chairman, Sir, Shri S.K. Gupta, Secretary TRAI, esteemed speakers, esteemed media friends, distinguished attendees, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to this, the sixth International Summit of India SATCOM, uh, and to this particular session on making IFMC services, in-flight and maritime connectivity services, a major success in India. As you're all aware, the overall theme for the summit is satellite broadband, the new frontier. And this is to serve the national mission of broadband for all. Obviously, this would mean ubiquitous broadband everywhere, anywhere, anytime. And since in today's world, travel is such an inevitable element of ubiquity, in-flight and maritime broadband is absolutely essential. New satellite technologies are powerfully shaping this segment very nicely, and it is possible for passengers to have telecom services of great quality in aircraft and ships everywhere, in trains. Aircraft may be flying at 800 kilometers per hour, 10,000 meters in the sky, but still you can do it seamlessly. And I must be frank to say that customer expectations are also flying sky high. They are very well developed and mature, and they are demanding top class internet connectivity wherever they are traveling. As per one estimate, the number of connected aircraft, commercial aircraft, was about 9,000 in 2019 and is expected to grow to 23,000 by 2025. That is an increase of 150%. Another estimate says by 2022 itself there will be an increase of 50%. So what it shows is that this is a space that requires very close attention from industry as well as regulators. I'm happy to say that India is at the cutting edge of this segment, with TRA having made a kickstart on this a long time ago in 2018 itself, having conducted comprehensive consultations with all stakeholders and made recommendations which are wonderful recommendations which have been accepted and implemented by the licensor and even gone to the implementation on the ground or I would say on the air by our industry players. Uh, I will not take more time to talk about the technicalities of this. It's better left to the eminent speakers and experts who are going to address the audience and our chairman. And I will leave that part for them to talk about the various facets from made a big success, a ground and flight reality. Uh, we For this, we are exceedingly fortunate to have Shri S.K. Gupta as the chairman of this session, because he, in fact, changed the appointments to be available for us, and he's got a very tight schedule. Uh, he has been the architect of these recommendations and guidelines for IFMC. He was the prime architect, and before handing over the session to him, although he needs no introduction, I have to say a couple of words about him. He distinguished officer of the 1983 ITS cadre, and he has more than 37 years of experience, rich experience in all areas of telecommunications in various categories. He was earlier in DOT, holding posts in various capacities, and in TRA, he is a secretary TRA. Secretary TRA means the CEO of TRA. The authority is there, that is the board, and he is the CEO. He is the one who delivers everything. And he has actively been dealing with issues relating to key issues relating to broadband, infrastructure, IP networks, licensing, MNP, regulatory framework, for broadcasting and cable services, etc., etc. Um, I warmly welcome him to take the chair and address you all. Over to you, sir. Mr.
Thank you
Gupta.
very much. Thank you for very nice introduction, though I don't deserve for so many words as you have used. Um, Friends, let me start with thanking the BIF to give me an opportunity to share my thoughts with you at this particular session. In-flight and maritime connectivity is one of the very important recommendations TRI has given. Before I come to the recommendations and what are the provisions of the recommendations, let me touch upon as to how this all has started and what exactly the recommendations say on that particular thing. You will appreciate that now slowly the way people work, interact and behave is changing, and broadband in a sense is becoming a part and parcel of our life, and therefore even shortest gap where we are not able to access the broadband uh, feels us as if we are missing something. Now life has been such that there are requirement of travel across the globe and also within the country. So why to miss access to the broadband when you are in flight? And this was one of the starting points where we thought that we had to look into it as to how we can provide the in-flight connectivity when people are traveling within the country also. Before that, even those flights which are flying over India were not allowed to use the in-flight provisions, and they were shut down when they are flying over India. We also looked at various type of survey because some people were feeling that whether in-flight connectivity would be really of importance or not. So in that regard, I just like to touch upon certain points, which a survey was done by Inmarsat In-Flight Connectivity Survey 2018, and that pointed out that 66% people who are flying feels that it's a fundamental requirement to have access to the in-flight while they are flying. 55% of such people say that in-flight connectivity is crucial to their life and the way they conduct their business. 81% of passengers say that they will like to use in-flight connectivity if it is provided in the flight. And 67 passengers people feel that they will choose those flights where in-flight connectivity have been provided over those flights which doesn't have the in-flight connectivity. While people were also very cautious of the quality of the in-flight connectivity, and 54% people say that I will choose this connectivity only when quality of such broadband is good. Now the issue is that how are we going to ensure that this quality or access to the broadband is good, number one. Number second, very simple to the consumers. Number third, very simple to be implemented. And number four, it does not bypass any of the provisions which particularly relates to the security concerns. So we have given a recommendation and we said that okay, such registration or license should be given at a token 1 rupee license per year, because the idea was it should be cheap and should not become the embargo for people not to access it because the cost of such connectivity is very high. There can be technically two different methods. One can be the provision of the in-flight connectivity services through satellite, and second can be in-flight connectivity using direct to ground communication, which is normally called DA2GC. If we talk about in-flight connectivity through satellite, what happens that there is an antenna mounted on the aircraft which looks to the satellite where from you are taking the bandwidth, and through that the information reach to the ground terminal of the thing, and which we call as ground-based earth station. And from there, if it is a voice call, it can go to the some BTS where it will be switched to the concerned consumer where call is to be made. And if it is related to the broadband provision, it will go to some sort of ISP or maybe the equivalent equipment which is installed in the network of the mobile service provider. So that's the simple way where it works. We permitted use of C band, KU band, or KA band, but generally KA band is preferred over other bands. Reason being is that having antenna on the flight is primary requirement is that size of the antenna should be the low and weight of the antenna should be low. In this particular regard, K band antenna is to the lowest one, and because of that, it is preferred band for having the in-flight connectivity. What happens is that Wi-Fi connectivity is provided in the aircraft, and people can access Wi-Fi because all the devices people are carrying nowadays is having provision to connect to the Wi-Fi. The mobile is switched off during that. Put on the airplane mode while you are using these services. If you are going to use the voice related services, the condition is that it can be provided only when the craft has at the height of 3000 meters or above. While if it is access to broadband, once gate is closed, it can be provided. So there is a slight difference between the provisions of two different services. The commercial models, we have not talked too much on that, and commercial model can be made by the flight operators. It can be clubbed along with the charges of the ticket, or it can be done separately. So that we have not looked into that particular requirement. The important thing is there are a large number of the airlines operators who have adopted to it, and I am told that more than 30 aircrafts are fitted with the requirement equipment which are within the country, and therefore I would say it's a great success. As far as registration is concerned, almost all telecom service providers have done the registration, and they are ready to provide this in-flight connectivity services. Some others have also taken the registration, and in this particular regard, I hope that this service will be very popular in times to come. Though we are slightly constrained due to COVID since March 2020 onwards, people's travel on the flight has reduced. But I am happy that it is slightly picking up, and of late, if I see that flights are getting quite a few consumers, and in one of the flight, I could feel the experience of the in-flight myself while I was traveling between two cities in India, and then I was very much delighted that my recommendations has really brought fruits, and consumers like us are also able to use that particular service in India. So I hope that framework is very simple. It takes care of all the requirements which are there, and all sort of monitoring, etc., has been ensured. There is no hesitation in anybody's mind as to how the service would be provided, and many of the flights are already having equipments which provides Wi-Fi to use different type of things to consumers, and therefore people are quite experienced as to how to use the Wi-Fi within the aircraft. So they will not find much of the difficulty to using in-flight connectivity for broadband as well. So this is going to change the way people travel in the aircraft and bring a lot of changes for the positivity when people are traveling through aircraft and missing the access to the broadband. So I think no more people will face that particular phase, close your mobile, but they will say, put your mobile on the aircraft mode and use the broadband which is provided in our aircraft. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir, for your excellent and incisive opening remarks, which has actually set the context for the rest of the session. Your thoughts related to the importance of broadband, the role of how broadband can be enabled within the aircrafts when people are flying and away from their homes and offices. And basically, it is just, as you rightly mentioned, it's an extension of providing broadband services anywhere and everywhere, and to make it available. You've also, sir, very rightly hit upon the importance of what are the qualities of broadband in flight connectivity. You've spoken about the quality of service, You've spoken about the simplicity of the service, both from implementation point of view as well as for the consumers to use it. And you've also said about, you've highlighted about how it is important to ensure that the security norms are not violated under any condition. Very, very important, sir. Points made by you, sir. And with these excellent thoughts, sir, we now progress the session forward. I would now request the next speaker to come and make his presentation. Before the presentations are made, and we have 4 eminent panelists from different parts of the globe who are experts in their own domain, who shall be making their presentations, I'd like to set a few ground rules. Number one is that the presentation should not be longer than 10 minutes, please. And we shall be keeping the time and shall be giving you the first alert at 8 minutes, after 8 minutes. And of course, the second bell will ring at the 10th minute. So you are requested to take a heed to the bells that so as to indicate to you very clearly that where you are as far as the time is concerned. With these words, I will now welcome our first speaker of the session, which is Mr. Gautam Sharma, Managing Director of Inmarsat India. A few words about Mr. Gautam Sharma. Mr. Gautam Sharma is focused on the introduction of Inmarsat's voice and broadband data communication services across India, powered by the company's 4th generation of mobile satellites, known as I-4. Prior to joining Inmarsat, Mr. Gautam Sharma held a range of senior international positions with companies like Huawei, Arasor International Holding, Pacific Bangladesh Telecom, and Hexacom India Limited, which is now known as Airtel. With these, with a short introduction, I would now welcome Mr. Gautam Sharma to kindly take the floor. Over to you, Gautam.
Thank you, Debashish. Debashish, can you see the screen?
No, not yet.
Okay.
So your connection is a little low. It might take a little time.
It's coming.
Yeah.
Are you able to see the presentation now?
Yeah, we can, but we are not able to see the presentation. We are seeing something else.
Could you minimize your screen on your browser, please?
Minimize the browser.
Are you able to see now? No, not yet. It's a blank white screen that we are seeing. Just a second.
No, you're sharing already. You're sharing already.
Yeah, let me just try again. Yeah, can you see now? I hope you can see now. Not yet. Just on, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, it's there now. It's there now? Yeah, please go ahead. So, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Debashish, for the introductions. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. T.V. Ramachandran for giving me an opportunity to be part of this session. And also thank you to Mr. Gupta for chairing this session. As Mr. Gupta mentioned, 2020 has been a very difficult period for the entire industry, actually. And it has been the worst for aviation as well as tourism. So recently we've done a global level survey, which I thought it would be wise to share. This was a survey which was done with around respondents from 12 countries, just to analyze what are the thought process of passengers towards aviation at this moment. So that's something which I will share with you. Followed by that, I will share with you our continued commitment towards Global Express and our ambitions of launching services in India. The key findings from this survey was
that the flying habits of passengers are going to change forever. 8 out of 10 passengers feel that way, that they're not going to be flying the way they used to fly in the past. What has come very clearly is that safety and reputation is going to be something which would be key for the airlines to create differentiation and to ensure customers start traveling. And we also analyze that digitalization is the key forward to build the safety and reputation by minimizing the critical touch points in the journey of the passengers and keep them connected and entertained when they fly. So we had more than 9,500 respondents participating in this global survey. This was one of the largest after pandemic. With 12 countries participating, including India, we had around 1,004 people who responded from India. And health and safety remain the main concern of people. 85% believe that they have been impacted because of COVID-19. They're worried about catching the virus. They're worried about their finances. They're worried about their jobs, which is very normal, as expected, actually. But the silver lining in this survey was that almost 1/3 of people, that is around 34% people, have taken at least one flight in the last 1 year. So that's quite encouraging. Despite so difficult time, they still have taken, 1/3 people have taken flights. And it is more encouraging for US, UAE, and India, where almost 50% of the respondents have taken one flight. So in last 1 year. And one of the reasons could be for US and India, these are big domestic markets. And since the quarantine rules were a little bit relaxed by the states, so things have, people could actually travel. We also try to analyze what is the confidence level of people for taking their next flight. And as expected, people below 44 years are happy to take a flight within 6 months. But people above 55, they want to take next flight only once they have a vaccine. They'll be more confident to take a flight once a vaccine is there. We tried to go a little bit more in depth. We went into the geographical analysis, and we realized in case of India, 43% people believe that they are confident to take their next flight in next 6 months. So that's very encouraging for India. And if we see South Korea, it's totally different. 35% of people say they will not fly until COVID disappears. So we also, when we analyze this, we realize that US, Spain, India, which are the hardest hit by pandemic, people are still looking forward for traveling. So those are healthy signs. We also try to analyze what are the main worries that prevent them from traveling abroad right now. And of course, catching virus abroad is one of the main reasons. Quarantine was another reason. And especially we analyze in the western part of the world, especially Europe, each country has its own quarantine timelines. And that's something which has complicated things. In the case of India, 58% believe what worries them is catching a virus at the airport or in the aeroplane. So I think a right kind of messaging, if goes from the airport authorities as well as from airlines, there could be a possibility of building that confidence that enough measures have been taken to ensure the chances of catching virus at the airport is minimum, as well as in the aeroplanes. We also try to analyze what are their travel habits likely going to change post-COVID. And as expected, many people want to travel less frequently. Another important thing which we realize is people are going to fly only with those airlines where they feel trust, reliability. And especially if you see India, 41% of the respondents feel that way, that they will fly only with those airlines where they can feel safe, and as I mentioned, safety and reputation would be key things where Indian Airlines have to work for. And we realize digitalization is the key forward. We also try to analyze, whether people are happy with the current measures which have been taken during the flight. And the good thing is more than 80% people are happy with the kind of measures which have been taken, like thermal scanning, destination status alert, contactless payment, etc. We also try to finalize, understand what is their requirements, kind of flying experience they would like to have. And we find that 40% of people still are looking for in-flight Wi-Fi because of the anxieties they are going through. They would actually like to be in touch with their loved ones. So that's something very positive about it. Now, a very small brief about Inmarsat before I go to the Global Express. We have been giving services globally since last 41 years, and we have the world's best networks on L-band, S-band, and Ka-band. One of the reasons why we are trustworthy is because we own the entire constellation of satellites as well as the ground infrastructure, ensuring seamless and secure connectivity to our passengers globally. We have built world-class global distribution network to ensure we are able to give our services and solutions globally in more than 190 countries. In last 4 years, we have tried to do similarly in India. We have created an ecosystem for L-band. With BSNL as our main distributor, they have empaneled 7 people who are actually going to the market and selling services and giving support to our end customers. We're in fact creating a much bigger infrastructure for Global Express, our Ka-band services. We have already empaneled 12 partners who would be actually going to the market and selling our services to maritime and aviation industry. Aviation is not new to us. We have been delivering safety and operational services since last 2 decades. We've been giving passenger services in commercial cabin by Global Express, which is our gold standard mobile broadband connectivity, and also with European Aviation Network, which is our air-to-ground network for our European customers. Safety remains in the heart of Inmarsat. When we were established in 70s to give safety services to crew members in maritime environment. And the same we have been doing for aircraft since last 25 years. And we have a product called Swift Broadband Safety, which actually can give connectivity up to 2 Mbps and ensure the safety and the operational efficiency for airlines. And we continue to be the leaders on the business aviation side. These are few of the airlines whom we are giving our connectivity via GX or by European Aviation Network. And I'm very confident next year when we talk, we'll have a couple of Indian airlines also in this list. I think these next 2 slides are very, very important, which shows our continued commitment towards our existing and future customers to ensure we give them the required broadband connectivities which they require for the next 2 decades. We already have 4 GX satellites giving global coverage. We're going to have the 5th one getting live in January 2021. And GX5 would have capacity twice than the total capacity of the current constellation. So that's the kind of capacity we're trying to build. And 2023 onwards, we're going to be having GX7, GX8, and GX9, which would be launched. And in between, we'll have GX6A and 6B, which will also be launched. And in fact, these will be one of our largest. GX6A and 6B would be our largest satellites, which would be having dual payloads of L-band and Ka-band. And finally, on the India side, which I'm sure everybody is looking forward, we have already built a world-class gateway at Ghaziabad. As I stated, we are at the final stage of getting our 12 partners to apply for IFMC licenses. We are absolutely delighted and very confident by first quarter of next year, we would be starting giving services within India. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam, for your presentation. Thanks a lot for the excellent talk and also for releasing or giving an education about what the survey that you people have done about how the upbeat the market is regarding travel going forward post-COVID and even during COVID, especially from the Indian context. So which sounds very good and very optimistic for not just the Indian passengers as such, but also from the aviation industry perspective, as well as for IFMC service providers like yours. So thank you very much for that presentation. With this, now we would take the program forward, and I would now like to invite our next speaker, who is from SES, Mr. Aditya Chatterjee. He's Senior Vice President, Pro Market Segment Solutions, SES. Mr. Chatterjee, a brief about Mr. Chatterjee, a satellite and network services expert. He's experienced in aviation connectivity strategies, production solutions, delivery of cost-effective satellite connectivity solutions for aviation, land, and other mobility applications. He has earlier served as CTO and SVP of Connectivity Systems at Global Eagle Entertainment Inc. and as CTO of SpaceNet Inc. With this short introduction, I would now invite Mr. Chatterjee to take the floor, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so very much for inviting me. It's a very early morning here. It's about 4 o'clock. But I'm very excited. I want to thank all my esteemed colleagues. And today, what I would like to talk about is how India can lead in the IFC market and what SES can do for it. SES is one of the global satellite operators. We are supporting both KU band and KA band. We also believe in both GEO satellites and NGSO satellites. We have the world's first operational MEO KA, what we call the O3B network. And we are building the next generation of MEO called the Empower system, which is a KA band 11 satellite constellation MEO. And what I'm going to talk about is how together we can build a solution inside India so that India can lead the IFC market. With that, I will share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
So how can India get ready to lead in this market is my topic today. The world airline passenger traffic is increasing, right? I mean, it's very classic. It's very expected because the world is getting smaller. What is very exciting is that by all studies, India is supposed to be one of the largest commercial aviation market mid-decade. So by 2026, it's supposed to be the third largest market in the world. So that's an enormous market with a very good annual growth. And it is driven primarily by the domestic airline travel. Now that's important, right? Because passengers within India fly inside India. So IFC may be all over the globe, but IFC inside India is one of the most required, even if 40, 50% of these passengers, not 100%, use IFC or want connectivity. That's a tremendous amount of connectivity. So that being said, though, there is a very big impact, as my colleague pointed out, this year from COVID, right? And we in SES study that because the aviation market is one of our biggest revenue generating services. So imagine when aircraft stops flying, or passenger stops flying in those routes, you are affecting that market. The good news is that it's coming back. And this is absolutely true. You can see that now. You can feel that now. You can hear that when you listen to news. Look at the social media. People have started traveling again. And what is even better news is that the domestic travel is faring far better than the international travel right now. Which means if you look at India, the domestic travel is increasing. Maybe people are not flying outside, coming from outside, but if you can provide connectivity within India, these domestic passengers would certainly like to use them, right? The other good news, if you look at it from that perspective, is that the Asia Pacific market, including India, is actually expected to recover earlier to pre-crisis levels than the overall global market, maybe in the United States, in Europe, and so on. So for an example, if you look around this country, this is the United States, a month, 2 or 3 months ago, 20% of the aircraft were actually flying, right? And yes, on those 20%, there would be a lot of passengers, but it was 20% of a huge number, and it's quite some number, and that was adequate. 80% of the aircraft were shelved, right? They would be staying in their hangars, or they would be packed for long term in wherever the aircrafts are really stored during their non-flying time for an extended period. So, but in the Asia Pacific, it's half and half. Half of the aircraft are actually flying. Now, the passengers are not to that level yet, but it is expected that they will recover to pre-COVID earlier than other places. But all this has resulted in a focus of cost cutting, and really the airlines are not having a very good time. So what we believe is that although immediately you can't go and expect a lot of success from IFC, this is the right time to start building up. And if we want India to lead this, this would be the right time. Now, SES, unlike a lot of vertical providers, as my colleagues mentioned, we believe in partnerships. We are not a fully vertically IFC provider. We need IFC service providers to use our network services. We provide bits. We used to provide just plain megahertz. Now we provide megabits. And we provide SLA, high SLA megabits to aircraft. That's our business. We provide it the best way possible. We are absolutely dependent on the Indian IFMC service providers to use our services, other services, and create perhaps an interoperable solution which is future-proof, which provides the global coverage, and which, as I said, is an open architecture. And I believe, and I've said that before, that the Indian IFC market is ready for such partnerships. We provide GEO, we provide HTS GEO, we provide MEO, as I just said, which is the medium orbit HTS. We provide it now, and we will provide it with the next generation mPOWER. And with that, what we are telling the marketplace that it's time to create a MEO GEO multi-orbit IFC system. It will use MEO when required for its high performance. It will use GEO ubiquitously. It will use the 4G LTE on the ground to provide seamless connectivity. And for the passengers, they will all access broadband or voice or whatever they're interested in, office work, through the Wi-Fi system within the aircraft. It's some examples of how our MEO could work with the GEO setup inside India. We took some airlines, we looked at their flight routes. What you see in the purple is the coverage of our mPOWER system. And if you overlay the routes of some of your airlines on that, you will see that there's a lot of flight time just the Empower system can cover. But as we know, the IFC demands are growing. It would not be suffice with a single satellite. We believe that multiple satellites are always needed for absolute high SLAs. So we should be thinking about a GEO MEO setup with Empower as the MEO element. What is the solution which you could use? First off, a hybrid, a follow the aircraft functionality from the satellites, which would actually put a beam and follow the aircraft. A terminal, like one of my colleagues mentioned, the antennas on the top of the aircraft. It's a Ka ThinCom terminal, which we use now. And the VSAT systems. Ultimately, you absolutely need to use VSAT systems. Point is that you have to build now a future-proof solution, because very, very soon, IFC is going to be bundled into the MNO's phone plans. And this will be especially true in countries like India, which are huge telco operators. It's a totally immersion-based IFC system, ground-to-ground, seamless. One of the things we would bring in is our capabilities for the global seamless connectivity. We are very much in favor for open standards. We belong to a lot of these open standard organizations, primarily ranging from satellite systems to cloud systems to 5G systems. All of these are in advanced states in India. So finally, my last slide, we believe in partnership. We are not standalone. We would provide very high quality satellite network services. We would love to work with your companies, our current customers within India, the satellite service providers, to provide an IFMC system which is absolutely future-proof and which is resilient for a long, long period of time. That's all I have today.
You proposed, which includes a GEO and a non-GEO satellites, and how they can actually provide a seamless global coverage. Thank you very much. With this, we take the discussion forward. Our next speaker is Mr. Brajendra Bhuvan Urmalia from Nelco. Mr. Urmalia is the product and pre-sales head, maritime and aero business in Nelco Limited. He has over 20 plus years of experience, with 18 plus years of rich experience in the VSAT industry. He has worked extensively in the domains of solution engineering, pre-sales, product development, network operations, system integration, and project implementation. With this short introduction, I would now hand over the floor to Mr. Brajendra Urmalia. Over to you, Brajendra. Thank you.
Thank you, Devashish. Telecommunication companies in the past have been facilitating communication media for the enterprises. Yet, all of us had a practice of meeting face to face. With the advent of COVID, we are now forced to meet on the digital platform, and this is the new normal. I would like to welcome all the eminent guests who are present in this session with this new normal in the SATCOM 2020. I think there's been a lot that has been spoken by our eminent guests from Inmarsat, speakers from Inmarsat and SES, about what is the global trend in the aero as well as the overall SATCOM industry, and how COVID has had made an impact on the overall industry. I think with all this pandemic going around in the world, as a country, I think India is making a kind of initiatives in line with the global trends, and it is not left far behind. And that too, particularly in the space of satellite communications. Globally, the satellite communication in the last few years have started gaining momentum with new satellite technologies adoptions like the LEOs, the MEOs, HTS, and the HAPS, which is coming up now. And these techs are working typically in two forms. One, they are helping in scaling the availability of the bandwidth, which helps in bringing down the cost per megabit to the customers. And second is also, it is helping in terms of improving the network characteristics on the satellite media, which is what is making it more and more acceptable to the community. Now, in line with this, India has recently introduced the IFMC policy, and it is also now working in changing the SATCOM policy, which would be in line with these changes, and which is a very good sign for the industry, and it's a welcoming change. We as a company, Nelco, have started the IFMC services as soon as the policy was declared. I think we were one of the first providers to obtain the IFMC license, and we are the first providers to not only obtain the license but also to start the services and have customers both in maritime as well as aero domain. COVID has actually destabilized the progress that we as a nation were making, especially in the IFMC field. Now, COVID has also given us an opportunity to step back and think on our policies and our game plan as to how we can take these services to the customers in a better way. So we are utilizing this time and making efforts to to prepare ourselves with new products and services that once the COVID is out, we will be able to take to the market. So on the one hand, COVID has definitely disrupted the market, has affected the customers, but it has also, we see a light after the COVID because we know that this is a temporary phase and this is not going to last long. So it has given us time in terms of preparing ourselves to bounce back once things get to normal. In the maritime segment, if we speak of the impact of COVID, definitely there is a heavy impact on the aero industry. In the maritime, it has affected the commercial market, the commercial shipping market, and it has hit hard the leisure market. I think that is the biggest blow which has happened to the maritime segment. The rest of the segments are more or less okay. They are working, they have not hit, their business have not shut down, but definitely there's a pressure in terms of price points from them. And I think this is a temporary phase, this is not going to last long, and both of these segments, which is the leisure as well as the commercial segment, is going to bounce back and come back to the normals in the years to come. I think with this new normal that we're talking, that everyone is now adopting the digital platform. So as I started with saying, it was not that this digital platform services were not available earlier. The providers were providing it. I think Cisco's Telepresence was one of the solutions which started doing the video conferencing and high definition video conferencing. And thereafter, there were a lot of applications which were available in the low cost solutions also. But the adoption was something which was not there, and probably people prefer to have face-to-face meetings. With the advent of this COVID coming in, I think adoption has increased, and that has what is being looked as an opportunity for we as service providers, because the customers are adopting the digital platform in doing their regular business. And I think a lot of this will be achieved even in aero and maritime, the way they're going to perform. So not only is the passenger connectivity that we are seeing that would work for the leisure and for the social networking, but I think a lot of passengers would also use the connectivities for their business while they are away. It's the same way when the mobile was introduced. Initially, it was an elite service, but thereafter it has become norm. Everyone has adopted mobile, not only for the leisure and the social networking connectivity, but they also used it for their official work. So that is what we see as the future to come in. And going forward, it is our endeavor to support the industry and take onto it in the coming future. Basically, it is important also from the government aspect that and the agencies associated with these policies to make the laws and policies a lot simpler in India, so that when the increased adoption starts post COVID, we don't face hurdles in front of us, and we can progress in a full speed. There should not be speed breakers thereafter. So one of the things that we would like to put from our side to the agencies involved is that we can utilize these times in terms of tweaking the policies which are there, so that whatever the minimum challenges we could see, those can be overcome. There's also, speaking of the processes and the laws, I think I'm not going to list or have a laundry list, but I think 2 or 3 important points we would like to highlight, which is very important, especially in the IFMC segment. I think both these segments are very volatile, and both these segments within IFMC, when we say aero and maritime, they are high bandwidth demanding segments. However, the demands do not last or continue for a year or for a particular period. So the demands is they'll come for a particular season and they may go out. So the bandwidth, it's always a crafts and threads. But in that, we need to have flexibility in terms of getting the bandwidth back to back from the satellite provider. And the process should be, it should not be a lengthy process. We should be able to get it as soon as possible. And also the process, how we can use the online media. So rather than going and adopting the physical mode of approvals that we have, not only is that we're improving the process and cutting down the timelines, but also making it easy by making it available online. So I think these are the 2 suggestions that I would, or requests that we put from our side. And towards the end, I would say this COVID is only teaching us a lot of things to do better and differently. And I think there's definitely a very bright future for all of us once we are out, both for the VSAT as well as for the IFMC industry. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Brajendra, for sticking to your time limit, first of all, and secondly, for giving us a perspective of both the aero and the maritime market. So thank you very much. And also for giving us some very, very crucial insights as to how the service providers could benefit if some of the regulatory challenges that are perhaps there, which need to be probably sort of lightened going forward, so that post-COVID the industry can actually take off, so to say, or go for a big bang. Thank you very much, Brajendra. With this, we take the discussions forward. Our next speaker for this particular session happens to be Mr. N. Jairam, who is the marketing head of Hughes India. Mr. N.V. Jairam is the marketing and alliance head for Hughes India, and he has been with Hughes for 20 years and been a part of major initiatives. With these few words, I would like to invite Mr. N. Jairam now to take the floor and make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to Mr. Chatterjee, and welcome all the participants. It's been a pleasure being part of this initiative, and thanks to IBF for organizing this during this pandemic and on this innovative platform. Now, sorry. Now, this IFMC license, which came in December 2018, has been a shot in the arm for the Indian VSAT service providers, and I believe this is the first step in this direction, and there are many more tweaking which will happen, and which will be made more Indian VSAT service provider friendly. We are fully committed. We as Hughes are fully committed to this, and we have made substantial investments on multiple platforms to provide the services for the maritime and aero customers to avail of. Now, I'll straight away jump into 2-3 key aspects, and since the time is short. One, while we all agree, and all the other speakers before me who had clearly mentioned that the business has been hit with this pandemic, especially aero has been definitely hit more than maritime. And maritime, it is mainly the traction has come from whatever it is, from the offshore market and the OSVs, rather than the merchant shipping. And of course, the leisure and cruise has definitely taken a hit, and we hope that it will bounce back sooner than later. Now, I would like to dwell upon a couple of points, 2-3 points, which are critical for this segment, or for the Indian service providers to really provide better services and for them to be made relevant. One, today, if you look at the definition of Indian waters, wherein is only 12 nautical miles from the shore, that is, it is, I mean, as per the license, only any vessel, any foreign Indian vessel need to have connectivity from an Indian VSAT hub or a NOC only within 12 nautical miles. Now that is too, big a restriction or a too smaller territory. We would really, it would be really prudent if this can be extended to the 200 kilometers from the shore, which is the EEZ, Exclusive Economic Zone, which will make the Indian VSAT service providers service, I would say, more relevant. And in fact, that would make many other Indian customers also, maritime, especially maritime customers, taking the service. Second aspect is on the bandwidth demand. Today, as I mentioned earlier, the maritime segment is mainly on the OSV, whatever little we see. But the main the segment would be in terms of quantity and in terms of demand for bandwidth is the merchant shipping. Now, I'd like to present something to support my point. Just a second. So, if you can you see this?
No, not yet. Now it's coming.
Are you presenting? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is visible.
So I have a couple of slides just to give some statistics. If you look at it, look at the merchant shipping. Their bandwidth requirement is going to go up by more than 2 times in the next 6-7 years. And the bandwidth requirement is going to be overall, this is a global requirement, it's going to be from 9.2 Gbps to from 2017 to 146 Gbps. So this segment is missing from India. They are primarily, and where is this bandwidth? Look, I mean, I would say, if you look at this is the kind of, again, the point I made. The merchant shipping is actually requiring more and more bandwidth. Of course, leisure has the maximum requirement, but then definitely that market will take some time to catch up. Once passenger confidence and is built up, only then maybe by mid next year or late next year, once the vaccines are out, definitely this will also grow up. Now, where is this coming from, this demand? The modern shipping or modern vessels, the communication needs are different. One is, of course, the vessel operations. They want more automation, and many shipping companies are moving towards connected vessels with very few people, personnel to man it. Then monitoring, enhanced monitoring, advanced monitoring, remote surveillance, remote diagnosis, and a whole lot of crew communications, wherein the crews are in the captive in the ship for a large amount of time. So they need internet access. They want to be connected to the near and dear ones. They want entertainment. They want training, and definitely it is used for telemedicine. So all this means is a very high demand for bandwidth, and which is not quite possible with the legacy system. At least the Indian shipping ships are being, or vessels are using, which is basically on the MSS. Now globally, the demand is shifting towards broadband over VSAT, SS, whether it's KU or KA, wherein the capacity is abundant as well as the cost is low. So that's where we also should be moving towards. So that's another aspect. In fact, access to the best possible capacity that we can get. Now, this is just a snapshot of the Indian maritime market. As I mentioned earlier, the potential is enormous. In fact, the maritime traffic in the region is growing every day. The passenger shipping popularity is growing. Again, cruises were definitely a big market till March. Now, definitely, it's a short-term setback, but it'll definitely come back again. So, just so the point is that definitely there's a demand for bandwidth, and we need low cost, high capacity satellite options to be made available to become more competitive, because the major service providers across the globe have access to this and have become competitive and successful. Mainly, this is one of the main reasons. The third aspect, I would say the final part is in India. India is fortunately we are strategically located in one of the, especially in the maritime space, in the one of the busiest traffic routes. So we should take full advantage of this. So today, our satellites have limited coverage. They don't, I mean, go beyond maybe 100 kilometers, 200 kilometers from the shore. So we should be allowed, the Indian service providers should be allowed to have access to satellites which can cover the entire region. So as part of the IMSND license. So this makes more sense. This will add teeth and more, I would say, to the Indian service provider, and they become more relevant and we can compete in the global market, because any IMCC network is global in nature. It's not country specific. So I'm sure these are being considered by the regulators, and as I mentioned earlier, the IFMC license in December 2018 was the first step, and we can always, objective is to improve upon. These are some of the points which I'd like to put forward. That's it from my side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jairam, for that excellent presentation, giving us a perspective of both the in-flight connectivity and particularly the maritime market. And you've actually focused on both the commercial side as well as the non-commercial or the leisure market as well. While you have predicted what things, you've actually given a perspective of what is going on currently in the COVID times, and also your predictions seem to be very optimistic going forward in the future. And therefore, we all look forward to the markets growing post-COVID. We also appreciate your highlighting some of the regulatory perspectives that are currently perhaps coming in the way of making it a truly global maritime service business by highlighting some of the challenges. So thank you very much for your perspective. With this, I would now, we are at about 3 minutes past 3. I would like to throw the discussions open for a round of questions, if any, from, if there are any, please type your question on the chat group or on the Q&A, or you can even raise hands and we can get you in so that you can ask your question. And please ensure that your question is brief. Do not, please, and make sure that there's only one question per person. And also, if you could kindly tell us who is the question addressed to. So it will help us in actually making sure the response is tailored to the question that has been asked. Thank you. With this, I throw the floor open to the audience for questions, if any. We have about 5 to 7 minutes before we can, we can't take more than a few questions, unfortunately. But please go ahead if you have any. I haven't seen any questions typed on the chat group or on the Q&A so far. I see one raised hand, so let me, Mr. C.P. Suresh.
Yeah.
Consultant from Legal Wireless. Yes, Mr. Suresh, please ask your question. Yeah, please do.
It is a general question to the any specific speaker can answer. Is there any consolidation of? Am I audible? Please, can I go ahead?
Yes, you are audible.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Is it any similar to Azure platform of Microsoft? Is there any integration of the ground segment is being planned in the country, where all the services, any service can be depending on the, uh, you know, depending on the round trip delay. The suitable service will be a cloud-based platform, so that all the networks can get through a common, virtualized system. Anything is being planned. That's my question.
This is Chatterjee from SES. We have a very significant relationship with Microsoft, specifically integrating with the Azure system. What we believe and what we are doing right now is connecting all our teleports around the globe to the Microsoft Azure cloud. I mean, if that helps. So at some point of time, passengers in Indian aircrafts could access the Azure in a very efficient manner. There's a concept of virtual gateways, so gateway as a service. So with our Empower teleports around the globe, each of them would be directly connected to the cloud.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. I hope, Mr. Suresh, that answers the question.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Any other question? A question from Mr. Fabio Leti from Inmarsat. Could Mr. Jairam explain and this is addressed to Mr. Jairam, could Mr. Jairam explain his proposal to extend to 200 kilometers the rules for maritime services applied for 12 nautical miles?
What I meant was current regulations mandate a service from Indian service provider only till 12 nautical miles from the shore. What on behalf of the Indian visa service providers, I propose that to be made more relevant, it should be extended to 200 kilometers from the shore, which is the exclusive economic zone of the country ends at the 200 kilometers. That is my point.
Trust, Mr. Lete, you would have got your response. Thank you, Mr. Jairam. Any other questions? We have just 2 minutes to go before we move on with our session. So if there are any last minute questions, please put them into the group or raise your hand.
Debu, I think you can invite Mr. Gupta too.
So looks like there are none. So with this, I would now request our chairman of the session, Mr. S.K. Gupta, to kindly provide his concluding remarks. Over to you, sir, Mr. S.K. Gupta.
Can't hear him. He's on mute.
Mr. S.K. Gupta, sir, you are on mute. So
you have to unmute yourself.
So you need to unmute.
Debu, the administrator can unmute him also.
Yeah, just let me.
Mohit?
Sir,
Mr. Gupta?
He is still on mute, so we can't hear him.
Arun or the administrator.
Somebody needs to call him up.
Sir, the host can mute but cannot unmute. Mr. S.K. Gupta would have to unmute himself.
Mr. Gupta, can you hear us? Let me try him on the mobile.
Sir.
Sir, you're muted. Oh, Mr. S.K. Gupta is on mute. We can't hear him. How long will he be? Has he? Oh, then because we are now at the end of the session, so then we'll carry on then, huh? Okay, right. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
He's been called by the chair. Suddenly, I had to go something urgent. So if
Right.
you can call on
Arun to give the vote of thanks.
Arun to make his concluding remarks.
So, so with this now, we have reached the end of our session today. I would now like to invite Senior Director Operations Broadband India Forum, Mr. Arun Mukherjee, to give the vote of thanks. Please, over to you, Arun.
Thank you, Debashish. Terrific job of moderating, I must say. A very heartfelt thanks to Mr. S.K. Gupta for taking his time out from his very hectic schedule and being with us today and sharing his opinions and views, which are always valued and extremely balanced, giving us the rationale behind the recommendations, how it would help to take India forward. Thank you, sir, for being with us. I thank Mr. Gautam Sharma, Managing Director of Inmarsat, on his address and presentation. Gave us some extremely interesting insights on the passenger habits during the COVID period and how these are going to be used to see how Inmarsat and give us an insight on what Inmarsat is doing in India. We look forward to all that Inmarsat is going to be offering. Special thanks to Mr. Chatterjee, who signed in from a very different time zone from across the world, from Florida. Sir, thank you very much. And for a very positive approach, looking how India can lead in this field of in-flight and maritime connectivity. I thank Mr. Brajendra Urmalia of Nelco for pointing out especially that some of the laws should be made simpler post-COVID, not just, already some work has been done, a lot of work has been done, but seeing the pandemic, we have seen a lot of steps being taken on work from home in the BPO segment, and it's really many steps have to be taken to improve the economy. So thank you for that. And a special thanks to Mr. Jairam of Hughes. Hughes has always been a spearhead in the SATCOM committee of Broadband India Forum. And a very valid point was made that India is really the center of some of the busiest traffic routes across the world. In fact, Britain at one time ruled the world thanks to the fact that they ruled India. So I don't see why India can't rule the world commercially if our laws don't get better. Thank you, sir, for that. Extremely important point. I thank Mr. TV Ramachandran for introducing the session and the audience who've asked questions. I hope they have been answered properly. I trust that has been done. And I thank the audience for their patient hearing of this session. Thank you, everyone.
Arun, thank you. And I'd like to add thanks to all the sponsors and supporters who have made this happen so far. And to remind everybody that we are having a session on rural broadband following this.
Yeah.
Starting from, I think, 4 o'clock?
3:45, sir.
3:45. So I request all to join for that. And the chair of that session will be Mr. Shakya, DDG Satellite from DOT. So look forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you.
Thank you for it.
I'd also like to thank everybody for really keeping to their schedule within the time limits. It was really appreciated.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's right. Perfectly right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.